Welcome back to the channel. Urban Gardener DC here. My name is Chris. So in this video I wanted to go back and go over some of the absolute best ways, actually my three top ways of properly up potting, like upwards, right? Up potting your tomato plants and other vegetables. As you know, we use this 2-cup method. Solid cup on the bottom, punch some holes in the top cup. We place our germinated tomato down deep into the upper cup. As you see, the roots are growing out of the bottom. What happens at this stage in my zone, in zone 7 here in Washington, D.C., is they start to dry out really fast, right? You're going to end up watering them probably every 1 or 2 days. It's going to be an inconsistent type of watering. So understanding your space, right? So as you guys know, I germinate on my kitchen countertop, and I have some metal shelves that I germinate in the original seed trays, similar to this seed tray right here, right? So my best method that I've found working my garden in this community here in DC is when they get to be about, where's my ruler? Let me see. I'm gonna show you guys. Yeah, so if you look at this ruler, it's hard to see, sorry. It's about 17 inches tall from the bottom of this 18-ounce cup to the very top leaf. As you see, this is beyond first, second, third, or fourth leaf. This is not gonna be an issue to transplant a tomato at this stage. And the reason I do that is it's still late March here in zone 7. It's March 24th, I believe. So we have a solid 5 or 6 weeks before I feel comfortable putting something like a tomato, a hot weather crop, outdoors. Now, the germination stage, when we went from the seed tray, went and transplanted up to this pot here, it's been nothing but love. This tomato has thrived. I mean, look how, you can't imagine how healthy this tomato is. But for that purpose, a few years back, I learned that it made more sense, because I use these plastic bins anyways. That's how I transplant a lot of my stuff, because I'm in a limited space. A lot of you guys might be in a limited space. Others that are on a farm or have some sort of barn or a high top. I don't have those luxuries. So what I found is these black, they're actually 2.9 quarts, right? I found these, it might have been at like a nursery, but I think it was at like a big box store. It was like a Home Depot or a Lowe's a couple years back, and they're actually a very solid base. So with that being said, understanding my space, it said, well, I could probably get for probably 8 of them in one of these bins, which is great. I normally grow between 20 and 30 tomatoes across all the other varieties in my home garden. But by me understanding my space, I said, wow, I could use something like this and bury this seedling that I call, it's not a seedling anymore, very deep, right? So if we go bottom to bottom, I'm probably going to lose the bottom 6 leaves or so. So as you know, with the tomato, it has that root system, that furriness on the main stem, and that furriness creates more roots that go outward. And the best way that I've found is actually my personal favorite. It's a growing medium that I use. It's really actually just potting soil, and then I actually just went and picked up a big bag of peat moss. I'll flash it up on the screen here. I get it from my local Tractor Supply. You can find peat moss in some of the big box stores, but what I like about this peat moss, it's called Black Gold. It's actually certified organic, right? Certified organic. It actually comes out of Canada. So what I like to do is I'm gonna start scooping some of this into my tray, and I'll show you how it looks. It's very fine, very coarse. There's not a lot of sticks or twigs or any other elements that could affect you know, any unwanted pesticides or things that you just don't want your organic vegetables growing in. And then I'm going to mix just my regular potting mix, and I'm going to give that a stir with my hand, and I'm going to scoop a bottom layer into this 3-quart or 2.9 quart black bucket. And I'd like to scoop, for this one, I'm going to do about 3 inches. I'm not sure if you can see that there, but it's about up to there on the plant, on the pot, right? So that's going to give me a really, really nice base of potting mix that has nutrients and other elements that'll help the plant and help this tomato really, really establish a solid root base. But I'm not actually adding a whole lot of extra additives, because at this stage in the plant's life, it hasn't flowered yet. It's still growing. You know, it needs to grow for a certain period to develop its proper leaf system, which is where these tomatoes, they thrive getting those nutrients from the sun and the natural environment. So as long as we haven't flowered yet, we have no suckers, nothing, it's going to be perfectly easy to transplant this straight into this pot. So I'll show you, let me just get this out. As I would have assumed, this is super, super dry. Look at it's literally a root mess at the bottom of this cup, which is going to be perfect conditions, because these soft, tender roots are going to thrive in this new pot. And then what's great about it is that when I go to plant this outside, it's going to take off immediately, because even though I might stunt its growth a little bit today by doing this, and I might stunt its growth, the roots might retract a little bit when I go and plant it in the ground, I've given this tomato probably 8 weeks of advanced growth, so that when it hits the soil outside, it's nice and warm in June, and the sun rays and everything else starts shining down. This plant is likely going to thrive a whole lot faster than something that maybe I bought at one of the big box stores, or maybe one of the smaller plants that I germinated, and I didn't give it ample time for it to grow. So I like to break off those 2 bottom leaves, and I'm going to break off and drop in there the next set of leaves, and probably break off this last one. Right, so if you see that, I've now skimmed this plant down. There's going to be about 4 to 5 inches that are actually going to help benefit the growth of this plant. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and push that down a little bit. I'm going to grab some more of my peat moss mixture along with the potting mix, and I'm going to fill that up to the rim. You know, and understanding a proper growing medium doesn't mean you have to do some sort of exact measurements, right? I simply took 4 of these cup sizes, 18 ounces, 4 of the peat moss to 2 of my potting soil. So with that ratio, I'm now allowing the nutrients coming from the potting mix, and I'm going to combine those with the absorbency of the peat moss. Peat moss is wonderful, especially indoors, of helping you maintain a proper moisture level in your root system, and then that potting mix is going to add the extra nutrients that this tomato plant is looking for. Right, so the combination of the two, it's not an exact science. It's simply, I'm going to mash this down a little bit and get some more combination of this potting mix and peat moss mixed in here. But understanding how a tomato looks at this medium is, you don't want to starve the plant to start, but you don't want to over emphasize nutrients. You don't want to burn the roots, right? You saw before in other videos I talked about how much of the excuse me, how much of the water soluble should you use at the germination stage. You can actually do a lot of harm to a tomato plant by adding too many nutrients when it's a very, very small plant. When it gets to about this size, maybe 50% nutrient, maybe, I don't know, 30%. You don't want to add too much, trust me, because it's actually gonna stunt, you know, by shocking this plant initially, by taking this plant out of its comfortable environment in that cup, and then coming back and then moving it over, picking the leaves off. You know, you're already disrupting the plant's end goal, which is to grow and grow, present flowers, continue to grow. Those flowers become fruit, and when it gets to the end of that cycle and that fruit becomes ripe, the plant thinks that it's done with its actual cycle. So by adding this balanced medium, definitely helps with the nutrients and the equal balance. And then you also want to think about, I'm going to put my last little top dressing of this potting mixture on top, just to seal that in. And then, you know, you also think about how plants want to grow, right? Not knowing a whole lot about it, I totally understand with a lot of folks. I've learned, I do things right, I do things wrong. I've done things 100% correct, and for whatever reason, the climate changed, the environment changed, sunlight changed. It was too wet, it was too dry, it wasn't wet enough, it wasn't dry enough. So by indoor germinating, you're actually giving your plants, your vegetables, a better start when they go outside, right? So we now talk about feeding the plants with that potting mix. I actually mixed up, so we now have this tomato is now planted in this 2.9 quart or almost 3 quart. We actually left a little bit of the stem exposed, which is going to be fine because I'm really focusing at this point, because it's going to be protected from the environment. I'm focusing at this point on giving the plant the proper root system and a controlled environment. It's about 69, 70 degrees here, and this plant is going to be in full light, not sunlight, but manufactured light, about 12 hours a day, sometimes up to 16 hours a day, depending on how long I leave those lights on. And then I like to give it, you know, roughly 8 hours without light. So it's kind of starting to repeat the patterns of the natural sunlight doing this indoors. But I've mixed up, as you see there, it's kind of got a pink hue to it. I've mixed up some of my water soluble in this plastic jug, and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit in here. I actually pre-moistened my soil, so I don't want a whole lot of it dripping out of the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see this, and I don't want to tilt it forward too far, but by understanding how that peat actually absorbs the water, I don't want to spill it, but that water sits up on top when you first pour it. And what happens is that the way that peat works, the combination of the peat and the potting mix, it's going to absorb down into the root base of this plant, of this tomato. I love the underwatering method when you first start to germinate, but for understanding how what this plant is looking for, what these tomatoes are looking for, is I really find it beneficial at this stage, because you saw how big that root system had already become. Is for this purpose is to actually top water, because this is already from the bottom. There's already holes in the bottom of these 3 quart pots, and I just don't want it dripping out all over my pan and making another mess. But guys, look, that was like kind of an impromptu, because I looked at them probably 2 days ago and said, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have a problem with these wonderful system of using the 2-cup method, but I'm going to be watering these things every like 24 or 48 hours. So I just wanted to show you quickly my next step in understanding what these plants are looking for, how to give them the longevity indoors, because we still have about 6 weeks before it's going to be safe to plant them outside with the elements of no frost. Here in zone 7, our frost is somewhere between like the 5th and the 15th of April. We're at the very end of March, 24th, I think I said. And yeah, we have a solid 3 weeks, but they're gonna dry out. You're gonna spend most of your time doing very inconsistent watering to these tomato plants in these small 18-ounce cups. So I like to get mine transferred over to something just a bit bigger. I only have about 20 of them, so it's not a big deal. I can do it with about 3 of these big trays and get those in a nice, solid planting mechanism using these 3-quart pots. All right. So I'm not going to do anything other than that water soluble that I just poured just a very little bit in, because I've already pre-dampened my potting mix and the potting mix mixture. So by pre-dampening that, that's going to absorb most of the little bit of water I just put in. It just gives it a help, you know, just a little bit of extra boost. So that's about it for this one, guys. I really do appreciate all the interaction on the channel. Once again, I'll remind you that comments are more than welcomed. You can be critical. You can tell me you don't know what you're talking about. Or also you can say, hey, I really appreciate the fact that you're being receptive to each and every one of us, because we're all trying to learn how to be a gardener in an urban environment. And I've been trying to provide some really simple, easy things for people to do and not using a whole lot of space. You can do it on your kitchen countertop, as you know. You can do it on a shelf, maybe at your place of work, if you know, somewhere that you can just have something under light for at least 8 hours a day, even though it's manufactured light. That's what these plants are looking for. They're looking for light. They're looking for the proper temperature and the proper soil, or at least some soil, right, and time, right? So with that being said, guys, I really appreciate you checking out the channel. I actually am starting to really enjoy the interaction with everybody, so keep that coming as much as you can. And I will see you guys on the next one.